Ethan Carter adjusted his rifle and scanned the burning city below. The skies of Phyrexia were thick with smoke, and distant explosions rumbled like an unending storm. The evacuation was nearly complete, but Ethan knew there were still civilians trapped in the ruins. He couldn't leave them behind. "Sergeant, we need to move." A voice crackled in his earpiece. It was Lieutenant Briggs, his squad leader. "Enemy forces are closing in." Ethan didn't respond. He had seen movement in a nearby building. A shadow, small and quick. A survivor. He couldn't ignore it. He sprinted toward the crumbling structure, his boots kicking up dust as he navigated through the rubble. The war had turned Phyrexia into a wasteland, and anyone left behind wouldn't survive the night. As he entered the ruined building, his eyes adjusted to the dim light. The air smelled of smoke and burning metal. Then he saw her, a young alien girl, no older than 10, crouched in the corner, her golden eyes wide with fear. Her deep blue skin was smeared with dust, and her dark, silken hair hung in messy strands around her delicate face. She wore a tattered cloak, too large for her small frame, and her tiny hands clutched a broken piece of cloth, perhaps a remnant of her family. She didn't speak, didn't cry. She just stared at him, frozen in place. Ethan lowered his weapon and raised his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm here to help." The girl flinched at his voice but didn't run. That was a good sign. Another explosion shook the ground, and dust rained from the ceiling. Ethan knew they had no time. "We need to go," he urged, stepping closer. "I promise I won't let anything happen to you." The girl hesitated for only a moment before crawling out of her hiding spot. She reached out a trembling hand, and Ethan gently took it, his calloused fingers wrapping around her small, delicate ones. That was when the gunfire started. Ethan turned sharply, shielding the girl as bullets shattered the walls around them. Drek's Dominion soldiers had spotted them. "Stay close," he commanded, lifting the girl into his arms and sprinting toward the exit. Outside, chaos reigned. Dropships hovered above, their engines roaring as they carried refugees away. Ethan's squad was already boarding, waving frantically for him to hurry. Behind him, Drek's soldiers advanced, their dark armor reflecting the fire around them. Ethan ran, his legs burning as he pushed forward. The girl clung to him, burying her face in his shoulder. Briggs reached out a hand from the ship's ramp. "Carter, jump." With every ounce of strength, Ethan lunged forward, gripping the edge of the ramp. His squad mates pulled him up just as the dropship lifted off, the ground disappearing beneath them. For the first time that night, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. He glanced down at the girl in his arms. She looked up at him with those golden eyes, still filled with fear, but also something else: trust. She didn't speak, not even when they reached the safety of the refugee ship. She simply sat beside him, holding onto his sleeve as if letting go would mean losing him forever. But war had its way of separating people. As soon as they landed at the safe zone, officials took over, organizing the rescued civilians. Ethan tried to stay with the girl, but orders were orders. A woman in a white uniform gently took her hand, guiding her away. "You're safe now," Ethan told her, forcing a reassuring smile. The girl didn't respond. She only looked at him, her golden eyes searching his face as if trying to memorize it. Then she was gone. Ethan never learned her name, never saw her again. He told himself she was just another refugee, one of thousands he had helped save. But deep down, he never forgot her. And neither did she. Ethan Carter leaned back in his pilot's chair, staring at the endless stretch of space outside his freighter's window. The stars blurred as his ship, the Wayfarer, cruised through hyperspace. It had been years since the war, years since he had left the military behind. Now he was just a cargo runner, moving supplies between frontier worlds. A simple life, a quiet life. But tonight, something felt different. His ship's console beeped, breaking the silence. A message. Encrypted. Anonymous. Ethan frowned. He didn't get encrypted messages. His clients were small-time traders, nothing secretive. His gut told him to ignore it, but his fingers were already tapping the screen, pulling up the message. Ethan Carter, you don't know me, but I know you. I need your help. Come to Tarsus Station, Dock 17. Please, it's important. There was no sender ID, no signature, nothing. Ethan stared at the message. It could be a trap. Smugglers, pirates, bounty hunters, space was full of people looking to set someone up. But something about the message, it felt personal. His mind drifted back to the war, to the burning ruins of Vyrexia, to a small, frightened girl with golden eyes. No, it couldn't be. Ethan shook his head. That was the past. But still, something inside him told him to go. With a sigh, he adjusted the ship's course. Tarsus Station it is, he muttered. Tarsus Station was the kind of place where people went to disappear. Floating on the edge of a dying star system, it was a hub for traders, mercenaries, and those who didn't want to be found. The air smelled of rust and engine oil, and the neon lights flickered like they hadn't been replaced in years. Ethan walked through the crowded docking bay, his senses alert. He had been in places like this before. He knew the rules. Don't make eye contact, don't ask questions, and always keep a hand near your weapon. He reached Dock 17 and scanned the area. Nothing unusual. Just crates, loading droids, and a few mechanics working on a damaged shuttle. No sign of whoever had sent the message. Then he felt it. A presence. Someone watching him. He turned sharply, his hand moving toward his sidearm. And then he saw her. A woman stood in the shadows near a cargo container. Tall, elegant, and unmistakably not human. Her deep blue skin shimmered under the station's lights, and her golden eyes locked onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. Ethan's breath caught. Those eyes. He had seen them before. The girl from Vyrexia. But she was no longer a child. She stepped forward, her movements graceful but cautious. Ethan Carter, she said softly. You came. Ethan's mind raced. He had imagined this moment, wondered what had happened to her, but never expected this. Who are you? He asked, though he already knew the answer. She hesitated, as if unsure of what to say. Then she straightened. My name is Syra. Syrah. The name suited her. Ethan exhaled. You sent the message. She nodded. I had to find you. I've been searching for years. Why? Syrah glanced around nervously. Not here. It's not safe. Ethan's instincts flared. He had spent enough time in war zones to recognize fear. Someone was after her. Come on, he said, leading her toward his ship. We'll talk inside. They moved quickly, but just as they reached the docking ramp, a group of figures stepped into their path. Drek's soldiers. Ethan swore under his breath. The Dominion had found her. One of the soldiers, a tall man in dark armor, smirked. Going somewhere, Carter. Ethan didn't wait for an answer. His hand shot to his blaster, and in one swift motion, he fired. The first soldier dropped, and chaos erupted. Run, Ethan shouted. Syrah didn't hesitate. She sprinted up the ramp as Ethan fired at the remaining soldiers, dodging behind cargo crates for cover. The Dreks returned fire, their weapons sending bursts of red energy scorching past him. Ethan ducked and sprinted toward the ship, slamming the emergency lock on the ramp just as Syrah pulled him inside. Get us out of here, he barked, racing to the cockpit. Syrah leaped into the co-pilot's seat. I hope you still know how to fly. Ethan didn't answer. He just grabbed the controls and launched the Wayfarer into space. The station's alarms blared behind them as the ship roared out of the docking bay, Drek's fighters scrambling in pursuit. Ethan pushed the engines to full throttle. Hold on. The ship lurched as he veered into the asteroid field surrounding Tarsus Station. The Drek's fighters followed, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse. Syrah gripped the dashboard. They won't stop until they have me. Ethan clenched his jaw. dodging between asteroids as enemy fire streaked past. Then we don't let them. With a sharp maneuver, he twisted the ship through a narrow gap, causing one of the Drex ships to crash into a floating rock. The explosion lit up the void. Sci-Fi turned to him, eyes shining. "You're still as reckless as ever." Ethan smirked. "And you still know how to find trouble." A moment of silence passed between them. Just a second, but filled with unspoken words. After all these years, they had found each other again. But the real danger was only beginning. Ethan Carter leaned against the control panel of the Wayfarer, catching his breath. The ship had finally escaped the Drex fighters. But the danger wasn't over. Sci-Fi sat in the co-pilot's chair, her golden eyes scanning the star map on the screen. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The Dominion won't stop. They will send more ships." Ethan nodded. He had seen this kind of pursuit before. Relentless, merciless. The Drex never let a target escape. But there was something else, something deeper. "All right," he said, adjusting the ship's controls. "I'll find a safe place to land. But first, you need to tell me what's going on." Sci-Fi hesitated. She looked at him, as if weighing whether to trust him. But then she sighed and leaned back in her seat. "You saved me once, Ethan," she said softly. "I never forgot that." Ethan watched her carefully. She was different from the scared little girl he had rescued years ago. Now she was poised, intelligent, someone who had seen and endured much. "I never forgot either," he admitted. "I just thought you. Well, I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Sci-Fi smiled faintly. "I spent years searching for you. But I had to be careful. If the Dominion found out I was alive, they would hunt me down." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Why? What makes you so important to them?" She exhaled, then spoke the words that changed everything. "I am the last heir to Virexia's royal bloodline." Ethan blinked. He had expected many things, but not this. "Your royalty." Sci-Fi nodded. "My family ruled Virexia before the war, but when the Drex invaded, they destroyed everything. My parents, my people. They were slaughtered. I was just a child, hidden away by our loyal guards. If you hadn't rescued me that night, I would have died too." Ethan let that sink in. He had saved a princess and never known it. "And now, the Dominion knows you're alive." "Not completely," she said. "I stayed hidden for years, moving from planet to planet. But recently, I started gathering support. There are still Virexians who want to fight back, to reclaim our home. And the Dominion is afraid of that." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "So that's why they attacked the station. They weren't just after you. They were trying to erase any chance of a rebellion." "Exactly." Ethan sighed. He had spent years trying to avoid trouble, trying to live a quiet life. But trouble had found him anyway. "What's the plan?" he asked finally. Sci-Fi looked at him, hope flickering in her golden eyes. "I need to reach someone. A man named Captain Dane Harlow. He leads a rogue battleship called the Iron Revenant. He was once a high-ranking officer, but he turned against the Dominion. If I can get his help, we might have a chance." Ethan recognized the name. Harlow had been a legend in the war, a strategist who had nearly brought the Dominion to its knees before disappearing. "You think he'll help?" Ethan asked. Sci-Fi nodded. "If I can convince him that Virexia still has a future, yes." Ethan thought for a moment, then sighed. "All right. But after this, I'm done with wars." Sci-Fi smiled. "I understand." He wasn't sure if he believed her. Ethan set the ship's course toward Harlow's last known location, a hidden base near a gas giant called Zephyr 9. As the engines hummed and the ship shot into hyperspace, he glanced at Sci-Fi. She had changed. She was no longer the helpless girl from the past. She was a leader now, the survivor. And somehow, even after all these years, she had never forgotten him. But Ethan had a feeling that their fight was just beginning. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cockpit as the Wayfarer soared through hyperspace. Ethan Carter adjusted the controls, keeping his eyes on the star map. Their destination, Zephora 9, was still several hours away. He glanced at Sirah. She sat quietly, staring out at the swirling blue light of hyperspace. Her golden eyes held a storm of emotions: determination, fear, hope. "You sure this Harlow guy will help?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Sirah turned to him. "He's our best chance. He fought the Drex Dominion before, and he has one of the last warships strong enough to challenge them." Ethan exhaled. "And what if he says no?" "Then we find another way," she said firmly. "I didn't come this far just to give up." Ethan smirked. "Still stubborn, huh?" Sirah smiled faintly. "You said the same thing when you pulled me out of those ruins years ago." Ethan leaned back in his seat, shaking his head. "Guess some things never change." A few hours later, Zephora 9 system. The Wayfarer dropped out of hyperspace near the massive gas giant, Zephora 9. The planet's swirling clouds glowed orange and red, its rings stretching out like golden ribbons. Ethan scanned the area. No signs of Harlow's ship. "You sure this is the right place?" Sirah checked the coordinates. "He's here. We just have to send the right signal." She reached for the control panel and entered a sequence of flashing lights through the ship's external transmitters. A coded message. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then, the darkness of space shifted. A massive battleship materialized in front of them, its dark metal hull blending with the void. It had been cloaked. Ethan let out a low whistle. "That's one hell of a ship." The comms crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel. State your name and purpose." The voice was deep, commanding. Sirah leaned forward. "This is Sirah of Phyrexia. I need to speak with Captain Dane Harlow. It's urgent." A long silence followed. Then, finally, "Dock at Bay 3, and don't try anything stupid." Ethan smirked. Friendly guy. Sirah didn't respond. She looked nervous, and Ethan understood why. Harlow wasn't just another soldier. He was a man who had lost everything fighting the Dominion. He wouldn't take risks for just anyone. But she wasn't just anyone. Aboard the Iron Revenant, Ethan and Sirah stepped off the Wayfarer, their boots echoing against the metal floor. Armed soldiers lined the docking bay, their weapons ready. The tension in the air was thick. Then, a tall man emerged from the shadows. His graying beard and scarred face told stories of war and loss. His sharp blue eyes studied them carefully. "Captain Dane Harlow." "So," he said, crossing his arms, "the lost princess of Phyrexia comes to my doorstep. Never thought I'd see the day." Sirah met his gaze. "We need your help, Captain." Harlow let out a dry chuckle. "Help? That's funny. I don't do charity work anymore." Sirah stepped forward. "I know what you lost. I know the Dominion took everything from you, but you still have this." She gestured to the massive battleship around them. "You still have a chance to fight back." Harlow's expression hardened. "And what good has fighting done? I lost my crew, my home. We fought, and we lost. But we haven't lost everything." Sirah insisted. "Phyrexia still has people willing to rise. If we work together, we can take back what was stolen from us." Ethan watched as Harlow studied Sirah. There was something about her, something that made people believe in her. Harlow sighed. "You sound like your father." Sirah's eyes widened. "You knew him?" Harlow nodded. "I fought alongside King Uranus before the war. He was a good leader, a good man." Sirah swallowed hard. "Then help me honor his legacy." Another long pause. Then, finally, Harlow spoke. "I won't promise you a war," he said, "but I'll hear you out. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was a start. And for now, that was enough." The air inside the Iron Revenant was thick with tension. Ethan and Sirah followed Captain Harlow through the dimly lit corridors, past battle-worn soldiers and towering control panels. This ship had seen war, had survived it. And now, it could be their only hope. Harlow led them into a war room, its center dominated by a massive holotable displaying the galaxy's current political map. The Drex Dominion's influence spread across it like a dark stain. Ethan crossed his arms. "All right, Captain. You said you'd hear us out. So, let's hear it." Harlow leaned against the table, his expression unreadable. "I'm listening." Syrah stepped forward, her golden eyes filled with determination. "We need your help to take back Phyrexia." Harlow chuckled dryly. "That's bold. You don't have an army, and the Dominion controls everything. What makes you think we stand a chance?" Syrah placed her hands on the table. "There are still survivors. My people are scattered across the stars, hiding, waiting for a sign. If we show them that the fight isn't over, they will rise." Harlow's jaw tightened. "Hope doesn't win wars, Princess." Syrah didn't flinch. "No, but strategy does. And you are one of the best tacticians the Dominion has ever feared. You know how to hit them where it hurts." Ethan watched as something flickered in Harlow's eyes. Doubt, maybe even regret. "You've been running for years," Syrah continued. "Hiding. But you still have this." She gestured to the massive ship around them. "You still have the power to fight back." Harlow exhaled heavily. "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" Syrah straightened. "We need weapons, ships, allies. I know you have contacts. If we work together, we can strike at the Dominion's weak points. We don't have to face them head-on. We just need to make them bleed." Harlow was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Ethan. "And what about you, Carter? You were a soldier once. What's your stake in this?" Ethan met his gaze. "I didn't sign up for a war. I was just helping a friend." He glanced at Syrah. "But the Dominion doesn't forget, and now they're after us both. If we don't fight, we're already dead." Harlow nodded slowly, rubbing his beard. "You're not wrong." He studied Syrah again. "Your father was a great leader. But you're still just a girl with a dream. If I put my crew at risk for you, I need more than just words." Syrah took a deep breath. "Then let me prove it." Harlow raised an eyebrow. "How?" She leaned forward. "Give us a mission. A real one. Something that proves we're worth your time." Ethan shot her a sharp look. "Syrah, are you sure about this?" She nodded firmly. "If we want Harlow's help, we have to earn it." Harlow smirked. "All right. You want a chance to prove yourself. I've got just the job." He tapped on the holotable, and a planetary map appeared. "There's an outpost on Celor 5. It's a supply hub for the Dominion, lightly guarded but critical to their logistics. If someone were to remove it from the equation, it would set them back." Ethan frowned. "Sounds like a suicide mission." Harlow shrugged. "I never said it would be easy, but if you succeed, I'll know you're serious." Syrah's eyes burned with determination. "We'll do it." Ethan sighed. "Guess we're blowing up a Dominion outpost, then." Harlow grinned. "Good luck, Princess. You'll need it." As they left the war room, Ethan shook his head. "You sure about this?" Syrah glanced at him. "We don't have a choice." He sighed. "Yeah, that's what I was afraid of." As the Wayfarer prepared for its next mission, Ethan knew one thing for certain. This fight was far from over. The deep black of space stretched endlessly as the Wayfarer approached Celor 5. The small, dusty planet was nothing more than a Dominion supply hub, but its importance to their war machine was undeniable. Destroying it would send a message. Ethan tightened his grip on the ship's controls. "I still think this is crazy," he muttered. Syrah, sitting beside him, gave him a small smile. "It is, but if we succeed, Captain Harlow will have no choice but to help us." Ethan sighed. "I hope you're right." The plan was simple: sneak in, plant explosives on the outpost's fuel depot, and get out before the Dominion reinforcements arrived. Simple didn't mean easy. As the Wayfarer descended, the ship's cloaking device activated, masking them from enemy sensors. The planet's surface was barren, with rocky canyons and endless stretches of sand. The outpost sat in a deep valley, surrounded by tall cliffs. Ethan scanned the area. There are at least 10 guards patrolling the perimeter. Security drones, too. Sci-Fi nodded. We go in quiet. No unnecessary fights. Ethan smirked. Stealth mission. Not my specialty. Sci-Fi rolled her eyes. Just follow my lead. They landed the ship behind a ridge, far from enemy sensors. As the hatch opened, the cold desert wind hit them. Ethan adjusted his rifle while Sci-Fi checked her small pack of explosives. You ready? He asked. Sci-Fi nodded. Let's move. Sneaking into the outpost, they crept through the rocky terrain, using the shadows to stay hidden. The Dominion guards patrolled lazily, unaware of the danger approaching. Ethan crouched behind a crate as a soldier passed. The man yawned, clearly bored. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed him from behind, knocking him unconscious. He dragged the body behind cover. Sci-Fi arched an eyebrow. Not bad. Ethan grinned. Told you I could be quiet. They continued forward, reaching the fuel depot. Massive tanks of volatile energy stood in neat rows, their surfaces glowing faintly under the artificial lights. This is it, Sci-Fi whispered. She pulled out the explosives and started attaching them to the tanks. Give me a few minutes. Ethan kept watch. His heart pounded as he spotted a pair of guards heading their way. Sci-Fi, he whispered urgently. I'm almost done, she replied. The guards stopped nearby, talking to each other. Did you hear? The Dominion is tightening security across all outposts, one of them said. Yeah, they say some rebel is stirring up trouble. Ethan tensed. They're talking about Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi finished setting the final charge. Done, she whispered. Ethan exhaled. Good. Now let's. An alarm blared across the outpost. The guards spun around. Intruders. Run. Sci-Fi shouted. Escape and explosion. Ethan fired his rifle, hitting one of the guards as they bolted toward the exit. More soldiers appeared, opening fire. Blaster bolts streaked past them, lighting up the dark. Sci-Fi ducked behind cover, pressing a detonator in her hand. Time to leave. She hit the switch. A massive boom shook the ground as the fuel depot erupted into flames. The shockwave sent Dominion soldiers flying, and fire spread rapidly across the outpost. Ethan grabbed Sci-Fi's wrist. Go. They sprinted toward the Wayfarer, dodging incoming fire. The ship's ramp lowered as they neared, and they jumped inside just as blaster bolts struck the hull. Ethan slammed the controls, and the Wayfarer roared into the sky. Sci-Fi collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. We did it. Ethan let out a breathless laugh. Yeah, that was insane. The Dominion outpost burned below them, a sign that the fight was far from over. And Captain Harlow would have no choice but to listen now. The blue glow of hyperspace surrounded the Wayfarer as it sped away from Sailor 5. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, gripping the controls tightly. His heart was still racing from their narrow escape. Sarah sat beside him, staring at the screen that displayed the burning Dominion outpost behind them. A small, victorious smile played on her lips. We did it, she said softly. Ethan exhaled. Yeah, and now the entire Dominion fleet will be after us. She turned to him. Let them come. This was just the beginning. Ethan smirked. You really don't know how to quit, do you? She grinned. Never. Their mission had been a success. The Dominion had lost a critical supply base, and their forces would now be stretched thinner than before. More importantly, Sci-Fi had proven herself. Now, Captain Harlow had no reason to turn them away. Back on the Iron Revenant, the warship loomed ahead as the Wayfarer approached, its dark hull a reminder of battles long past. The docking bay doors opened, and Ethan carefully guided the ship inside. As they stepped out, Captain Harlow was already waiting for them. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable. Behind him, several of his soldiers stood at attention, watching closely. "You actually pulled it off," Harlow said. Syra lifted her chin. "We told you we could." Harlow studied her for a moment, then let out a short laugh. "I'll admit, I didn't expect you to come back in one piece." Ethan smirked. "Neither did we." Harlow turned serious again. "That explosion on Settler 5 sent a message. The Dominion is scrambling, trying to figure out who did it. You've made them nervous." Syra nodded. "Good. Now we hit them again." Harlow sighed, rubbing his beard. "You really are your father's daughter." He turned to his crew. "Get her a seat in the war room. It looks like we have a rebellion to plan." Sarah's eyes shone with determination. She had fought for this moment. Now it was time to lead. A new alliance. The war room was filled with worn-out soldiers, former rebels, and mercenaries. A large holomap displayed Dominion-controlled sectors, each one a symbol of their oppressive rule. Harlow stood at the head of the table. "If we do this, there's no turning back," he said. "The Dominion will come at us with everything they have." Syra met his gaze. "We know the risks, but if we don't fight now, we'll never be free." The room was silent for a moment. Then one of Harlow's lieutenants stepped forward. "I lost my home to the Dominion. If you have a plan, I'm in." Another soldier spoke up. "They destroyed my family. I'll fight." One by one, voices joined in. The rebellion had begun. Ethan glanced at Syra, seeing the fire in her eyes. She had come a long way from the scared girl he had once saved. Now she was a leader, ready to take back her world. And he would fight beside her. Harlow nodded. "All right, princess, you wanted an army. You've got one." Syra smiled. "Then let's make history." As the war room erupted with activity, Ethan knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The fight for freedom had begun.